I started this thing over like 4 times because I keep getting in my head and I can't like finish a coherent sentence. It's absolutely frustrating. But I really want to talk about this, so I'm going to keep trying because I have to keep trying, because if I don't keep trying, I'll wind up doing nothing and not being productive, and I hate not being productive. I spend so much time not being productive. So tonight, I want to be productive. Alright, hey YouTube, it's Pepper here. Last video I made, I showed off my new spawn tower that I built, and then I sort of just talked for about 10 minutes about my mindset and not feeling creative and not feeling motivated to create content. And I put that video out, and a lot of people seemed to like it. It seemed to resonate with people, and I really enjoyed making that one. I enjoyed making that type of content more than I've enjoyed making content in quite a while. So I figured I would start doing a series of videos where I just sort of play games like this, mining or whatever, do some sort of mindless content, and just talk about whatever I feel like talking about over them. And I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to title this, but I think I'll probably just not even list it as gameplay and just sort of list it with the topic of the commentary. So one thing I really wanted to talk about was sleep schedule and sort of just, I don't know, general mental illness in creative people. I consider myself a fairly creative person. My main thing that I've talked about here a few times is I write songs and I sing, and I'm not always the most confident about that, but if I'm being completely honest with myself, not trying to sound arrogant, I feel like I'm a pretty decent songwriter, at least lyrically, and I'm a pretty decent singer. So that's one thing I'm proud of. That's one thing I do. With that, when you look at like great songwriters and you look at like my idols anyway, the people who inspire me and write the best lyrics, they've always seemed to have kind of an unhealthy relationship with well, just about everything. They've had, you know, addiction, alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, whatever. Now I've been fortunate enough to not get into drugs, but you know, I've had a pretty raging nicotine addiction since probably about 14 years old. And it started with cigarettes, and eventually I quit for like 2.5 years. I got this terrible flu, and I just decided to quit. And I was doing pretty good, but then I tried a cigarette again, and then now you got these disposable vapes everywhere, which, by the way, I think are absolutely more addictive than cigarettes, at least for me. For one, you could smoke them like any time of the day. Like, I'll wake up and vape, or I'll vape in bed, and you know, you don't have to go outside, and you don't really smell, so it's just like all the time, constantly in your hand. It's like a pacifier. And then also, I feel like the nicotine is just, it hits harder, like it's stronger almost. Like, I don't know, these things are crazy. So this generation of teenagers, I feel like, has it harder. I've quit cigarettes for a decent period of time, a few times, and I'm telling you, I just can't get off this vape. Like, just doing that straight up is harder, cold turkey. But anyway, I digress. Back to my original point. There's this feeling that when you're a creative person, the creativity is sort of like married to the mental illness side of things. So I've always been a very anxious person and a very depressed person. And I go through periods where I'm just totally on top of the world, and I feel very ego-driven and very confident. And I'm like, you know what? I can do anything. My content is better than other people's. I am, you know, I'll I'll hype myself up. I'll be honestly kind of a dickhead. But then I go through periods where I feel like a total piece of shit. Like, I just feel like, you know, I can contribute nothing, and my content is worthless, and everything I write or do is absolutely worthless and pointless, and I just shouldn't bother, right? These highs and these lows can be very addicting. Like, it's kind of interesting because the same thing and the same mindset that absolutely destroys my life and has made it extremely hard for me to do anything, like hold a job or go out and interact with friends, is the same thing that, like, I feel contributes to my creativity, contributes to my sense of self in a major way, my lyrics, songwriting, etc. And I think a lot of creative types, artists, whatever, feel that way, and it's a very hard mindset to break. There's all these self-help type people and gurus and whatever, YouTube influencer types that act like they have the answer to everything. And I would wager that most of these people, just based off of seeing them, have never actually dealt with depression in a serious way in their lives. There's a thing that happens with depression where sometimes when you're depressed, you almost want to stay depressed. and it's kind of hard to explain if you haven't felt it. And based on what some of the people commenting on my video have said, I'm sure a lot of you have felt it, but sometimes it feels really, really good to just kind of wallow in self-pity and have things taken care of for you and whatever. Now, of course, not everybody has that luxury, and not everybody has somebody in their lives who cares about them and will sort of help them through that, showing them grace and kindness and patience while also not letting them sit there and, let themselves self-destruct. But you have a lot of these self-help people, and they act like they have the answers, and it's very hard. And I touched on it in the last video, because a lot of this advice that these types of people give is actually not bad advice. Like, a lot of this, you're going to see the generic change your sleep schedule, fix your sleep, get on a decent diet, exercise, go to the gym. That's not bad advice, but everybody knows it. How do I get the discipline to go to the gym? If I was raised in an environment where people ate unhealthily and we didn't have discipline and we weren't made to go to school or the gym or have structure or routine or sleep schedules or whatever, how do I change my mindset to the point where I actually do the things that I need to do to be a productive and healthy adult? I don't think people have the answers to that, or at least not the types of people who make videos on YouTube about it. And I'm not going to pretend to have the answers to that, because I am just a 28-year-old guy who is basically using YouTube as some type of therapy. That's another thing. Medication isn't always bad. So you're going to get a lot of these people that say, you just need fresh air. You need to just fucking go outside and go for a jog. Medication isn't always the answer, but I'm a big believer in therapy. And I am a big believer that sometimes medication is the answer, at least temporarily. There are people who have, like, their mindset and the way they think is just so fucked up, and there's just something not right in their brain, right? It's not connecting. And some of these people, I think, will need some sort of dosage of medication for the rest of their lives, probably. Now, it's not a cure-all, and it is overused. Like with anything, when people start prescribing ADHD medication or, SSRIs for anxiety and depression, and they start overprescribing it for everything and using it as a blanket fix, you're going to have people that push back. The pendulum always kind of swings in the other direction and say, oh no, you don't need any of that stuff. Therapy is a scam. Medication is a scam. It's all just big pharma or whatever fucking bullshit people say. I don't believe that. I think most issues, political or otherwise, when I look at them and I actually sit down and read about them, I know this sounds like such a centrist, milquetoast take, but most things seem to wind up somewhere in the middle. There are aspects that anti-therapy people are right about, and there are aspects that pro-therapy people are right about. And I think, honestly, with most things, balance is just the right answer. I think that medication for mental illness, in most people, it's good to use as a crutch or a stepping stone to living a better life. Say I'm the type of person who's so crippled by anxiety that I can't go outside at all. There was a period in my life where I literally did not leave the house. I just sat in my room and played video games. I couldn't do anything. I just, lowest of the low, right? When the coronavirus hit in 2020, I was already pretty depressed and suffering with agoraphobia. It's hard to explain, but basically it put me in a position where I was so mentally fucked that I just could not leave the house, or I felt like I couldn't. And coronavirus hit, and as somebody who already had health anxiety and general anxiety, it just was so absolutely awful. I lived with my grandparents, and I was afraid every time I left the house that I was going to get them sick and kill them, and this whole thing. Nobody knew what was going on back then, so I didn't leave the house. So when people tell you leave the house, exercise, fix your sleep schedule, mindset, whatever, if you can't even get to the point where you leave the house, you're already fucked at step one. So that's a scenario, I think, where if you can get on medication that gets you well enough to leave the house, then you could start working on the other stuff. You could start working on exercising and, all that other stuff. But the medication is the initial step. So once you get that medication and you actually leave the house and you get, working on these other things, then maybe eventually you get to the point where those other things put you in a spot where you're more fulfilled in life and able to handle things, and you don't need the medication anymore. I don't know. Point being, all of this stuff is easier said than done. And anybody who's telling you they have all the answers to fix your mental health or fix your life, it's probably lying or trying to sell something. It's a combination of things, and it's something you have to figure out yourself. You have to figure out what works best for you. Be skeptical, but don't be a conspiracy theorist. I think that's all I have to say on the topic. I'm sure I'll think of like 100 other things I didn't want to say after I post this video, but I want to try out this format and keep doing stuff like this because I really enjoy it, and other people seem to really enjoy it too. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.